We live in a world mesmerized by labels. In fact, we want to categorize everyone. When we watch the news, we say, well, that person's a terrorist, that person's right-wing, that person's a Democrat, that person's a conservative. We want to put everybody into a generic category, but my question is this: what does God see when He sees you? What does God see when He sees me? What does God see when He sees absolutely any soul on this planet? Because I want to see souls the way He sees souls. I don't want to believe the lies of my perception or the lies of my limited understanding. But instead, what does the almighty everlasting God see when He sees you? I have a game I sometimes play in airports or in a public place, and it might sound a little creepy, but it's to remind me of someone's value. I'll just choose a random individual, and I start just to think, hang on, I don't know that person's name. I don't know where they're from. I don't know what they've done. But I may know more about them than they even know about themselves. Because, see, there's three things. There are three things clearly in Scripture that we can know about any individual, and it will change the way we see the world around us. It'll change the way we watch the news. It'll change the way we show compassion to the hurting. And what are those three things? Well, the first thing is this. It says in Psalm chapter 139, verse 13, it says, "You formed my inward parts. You knitted me together inside my mother's womb." Now, my grandmother makes me these little caps, these knitted hats, and the thing about it is this. When she's knitting, if she makes a mistake, and I don't know much about knitting, but I know this. When she makes a mistake, she pulls out the threads until she comes to where she made the mistake, and then she resumes. And the end product is that these toques or these hats don't have any mistakes in them. In other words, they're perfectly made. Now, if that's my grandmother making hats in that way, how much more God? It says that He knit you together inside your mother's womb. That tells me that you are absolutely perfectly made. Not a flaw, not a mistake. You are exactly the product that God not only intended, but what He wanted. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. Now, I know that we're born into sin. There's sin in our lives, but God didn't make a mistake. So the first thing I know about you is this: you're intentionally created. You are intentionally created. But the second thing is this: you're not just intentionally created, you are intrinsically valuable. Intrinsically valuable. What do I mean by that? Well, intrinsic is something which is inward. It's what you are. It's not what man can make you. It's not what you make yourself. It's not what can be taken away from you. It's simply who you are. You are intrinsically valuable. Why do I say that? Well, it tells us in Genesis 1:27 that you were created in the image of God. In the image of God. What does this mean? He created you with a soul that will live forever. You're an eternal being. He gave you a mind to think. He gave you a heart to love. You see, you're intrinsically valuable, but not just that. Hang on. It tells us also in Jeremiah 31:3 that He's loved you with an everlasting love. That tells me there's never been a time that God has not loved you. And there's not a time where God's going to cease to love you. You're eternally loved. Wow. But that doesn't mean that God forces His love on you. You see, in our world today, if somebody forces their love on you, we call that abuse. But somehow with God, we try to have a double standard, and we say, well, how can God love us, and how can He condemn us, or how can we spend eternity away from Him? No, see, God offers His love. He loved you. He loves you. He will love you. But the question is this: will you respond to His love? Will you accept His love? Will you receive what He wants to give you? And so the first thing is you're intentionally created, no mistake. Second thing is you are intrinsically valuable. Intrinsically valuable. And the third thing is this, though: you're intimately loved. We know that you're loved. We already said that, but you're intimately loved. It tells us in John chapter 15, verse 13, greater love has no man than this, than that He laid down His life for His friends. And that's what Jesus Christ did for you. For God so loved the world. That's you. He so loved the world that what? He gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. I don't know much about you, perhaps, from a physical realm. Maybe I don't know you at all. But I know this about you. I know that you are intimately loved by your Creator. You were created for an eternal purpose, and that eternal purpose is to enjoy God forever. And so, I'm not sure what you see when you look in the mirror. I'm not sure what lies have been told about you or about another person. I don't know if you label people by their actions rather than by what God said about them. But this I know. I know that God did not make a mistake when he made you, you. And I don't know what you've done or what you haven't done, but I can tell you this today, that you are intrinsically valuable and that God still loves you as much as he ever did, and that he wants you to enjoy him forever. So the question is this: are we going to believe the lies that we're hearing? And are we going to look at others through the light of labels and cultural affiliations and ethnic backgrounds? Or are we going to believe what God has said about them and what he has said about you? You are loved.